Okay, well, hello, everyone. I am Lisa Reichert. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Career and Professional Development Lead within People and Organization Development, which is part of Berkeley People and Culture. I will share that one thing that made me smile recently was getting a really nice note of appreciation from a colleague. It was short, sweet, and specific, and it really made my week. Um, and I hope you're all doing well and having a good semester so far. And if you'd like it to be better, well, then you're in the right place. And because today's Now Encore series is about being happier at work. And we are going to learn how to tame imposter syndrome, perfectionism, and people pleasing tendencies. And here to guide us to identify these roadblocks and support us to shift our perspective and to reframe our mindset is Ramona Harvey. Ramona Harvey is a certified professional executive coach, trainer, and facilitator, and a speaker. And her work focuses on helping leaders to overcome imposter syndrome, perfectionism, and people-pleasing tendencies so that they can live to their highest potential and create a positive impact in their organizations and communities. Ramona coaches at corporations, including Google, Salesforce, Fidelity, also at nonprofits such as Common Futures and Esk Apprentice, and at universities like UC Davis and here at UC Berkeley, where Ramona recently volunteered her time as one of our coaches during our 2023 NOW conference. Thank you so much, Ramona. And prior to founding her coaching company, which is Ramona Harvey Coaching, Ramona was a marketing research leader, and she helped to shape market strategy at eBay, Twitter, SoFi, and Levi's, among others. Ramona was born in Romania and raised there, and she is passionate about personal agency and happiness, which she believes are key to helping make the world a more peaceful place. Ramona is a certified professional leadership coach, an emotional intelligence trainer, and a certified meditation trainer in training. And she holds a BA in economics from the Academy of Economics in Romania and an MBA from Zicklin School of Business, City University, New York. Ramona, thank you so much once again for just your enthusiasm and your generosity in sharing your time with us today in this Now Encore series format. And I will let you take it from there.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction, Lisa, and thank you all for being here. Honestly, this is such a true privilege for me to be here with you today. And I'm just so excited to share with you. I have been working with these tools that I'm about to share with you today. I've been using these tools with my clients to help bring out their best self, to increase their impact in their organizations. But honestly, the bottom line for me, the reason I do this work is because I really want to help people feel happier at work. We spend so much time at work, and I started this work by coaching work by transitioning from a career that I was doing before, where I really felt that there was so much opportunity for us to be happier because, frankly, I ended up not being super happy with my work. And I started to really want to understand, what is it? We spend so much of our time at work. What is it that is holding us back? And that question really almost haunted me because it ended up being really painful, and I really didn't understand what was happening. I really had achieved my career goals. I came to America. I had done an MBA. It really, people regarded me well. I was receiving positive feedback. So it really made no sense to me. And I started talking to people at work and just kind of talking about, hey, how happy do you feel? And people were just kind of looking at me like, why do you care? This is not about being happy. This is about, just essentially providing for our families at the end of the day. This is how people talked about it. And it just felt for me that that wasn't good enough and that wasn't going to work for me. And I kept kind of staying in that career until really I couldn't go any longer. And again, it wasn't because I didn't find it interesting or because I wasn't appreciated, but it was just this question that kept haunting me. And back in 2015, I switched to freelancing, and then eventually I discovered coaching, and I have been working as a researcher and as a coach to really try to unlock what does it mean for us to be happier. And so what I'm about to share with you is the exact foundation for deep inner transformation that I have been teaching for the past few years at startups, at private and public companies, privately within my own, private clients. And, it's just something that seems to be really working. And so I boiled down this 8-week leadership accelerator program that I created about a year and a half ago into this workshop. So I'm here to give you kind of all those insights and nuggets to really help you. And my hope is that you will feel happier, because it is possible. And we know that. I know that as a coach, we know that it is possible from science. And I'm about to teach you a system that I use every day, because this is a practice and it is a work that will do. And so, but before we get into all this work, I really just want to acknowledge something that I think is really important for us to really acknowledge for all of us. And that is that this session is not about fixing you in any way. This work is about finding the power in our imperfections. And it is a reminder that it is more important for us to really be brave and aware about how we feel and what's important to us than it is to be perfect. And here's the thing, my belief as a coach is that you honestly have everything that you need to shine. And truly my job as a coach is to really help you remove those barriers so that you can feel more clear, more confident, and really set realistic expectations. We'll get to that with those around you so that you can truly thrive and be happier at work in an authentic way. So let's get started. So I'll share my screen with you, and we'll go at the agenda that I have for us today. There's a lot to cover, and I will try not to rush us because there's so much goodness in here. So sharing my screen with you now and getting us to the learning agenda. So here is what we'll focus on today. My goal for the session is to share with you so that you can learn how to identify your imposter syndrome, perfectionism, and people-pleasing tendencies. I will repeat these words a lot today, so I'll just call them the IPPs, which I've been calling them with my clients. And I also want you to learn how to understand how your mindset, and this is primarily what we'll focus on today, how your mindset affects your emotions and your behaviors. And then we'll also take some time to really learn how to reframe your mindset and regulate your nervous system with self-compassion. I want to take a moment here to just make sure that I see the screen, the video panel, so I can see your faces as I'm sharing these. And I'll also encourage you to drop in chat anything that stands out to you as I go through this, because I'll share a lot. And I really want you to not lose sight of any insight, any aha that you have. Please share it, because the power of doing this work together and sharing is for you to connect with each other. Because what I see as a coach is this belief that there is something, that one of these IPPs is just something that only I feel and only I experience. And by you sharing with others, what you'll do is you will allow others to see perhaps your vulnerability, but also to make others feel less alone, which is such an important goal, really, for us to do this together. And so let's go to the next slide. And I always like to start by inviting you to slow down and really become present in this moment. There's so many learnings in here. And the point here is I really want you to integrate these in this moment. So what I want to invite you is to turn off your notifications, and I want us to get grounded together, okay? And feel free to turn off your screen or not. And I want you to get really comfortable in your seat. So we'll just do this breath work together. We'll just take a few mindful breaths. And what I want to invite you is to connect with that intention. Okay, so let's close our eyes. I will do that with you. We'll just take 5 mindful breaths. Back is straight. Connect to the ground. Your feet are flat on the ground beneath you. I want you to feel supported and present for this moment. Let go of any thoughts or any distractions or any worries that you have. Count to 5 for in and 5 for out. And as you do this, I want you to really connect with that question of what is it that you wanted to get out of this morning session? What would it look like if you were happier at work? Set an intention for what you want to walk away with today. Maybe stretch your neck and come back to the present moment. One last deep breath here. Welcome back. Turn on your screens if you would like, so I can see your beautiful faces and I can connect with your eyes and your presence. And let's get started. The first piece that I want to share with you today is how do you identify, how do you even know that you, that maybe these imposter syndrome, perfectionism, or people-pleasing tendencies are present? Because I will tell you, I didn't know that I had any of these things. So before I even kind of switched to coaching, I really had no idea of these concepts, to be honest with you. And what I found is that the most important thing is to even just be aware and identify these things. What are they? Let's start there. I did a lot of research to really understand, because what I found is that the reason I picked these 3 concepts to talk about today is because over the years of coaching, what I began to notice, and my researcher mind is always there kind of looking for themes, is that everyone, no matter what role they had in their organizations, they kept bringing up 1 or 2, or actually, to be honest with you, all 3 of these things. And so I really wanted to understand, what are these things? And so what I found out is that these are actually negative thought patterns. They're just patterns that run, they're automatic. They basically run the show. And so what's really interesting is when I ask people about the imposter syndrome and perfectionism, look, the thing is that not only are we conditioned with these things, but we are in some way trained to believe that they're helping us. So if I just kind of try to fit in and really fake it till you make it and try to do everything I can to kind of pretend that I am someone else, or even make myself look or sound like someone else, then I will belong. So, we even are praised for these things. And so no wonder that we kind of think, hey, this is part of my success. Perfectionism. So many people are so proud about, like, hey, it's all or nothing. I'm that person who, really wants to do it all perfect. And so we really believe that these things are actually helping us. And believe it or not, yes, we are rewarded for them in some ways. And so we begin to embody and really believe and integrate as part of who we are. But the thing is this, they are negative thought patterns, and they cause negative emotions, and they sabotage our potential. And I'll show you exactly how that happens. I'll break it down you will see in our second section exactly how these thoughts are really creating these negative emotions and how they end up creating certain behaviors that really truly are sabotaging you. And so they're sabotaging how you feel, right? And so they're just negative thoughts. And so they really make it difficult for us, right, to end up really showing up our authentic self. There's so much research recently about bringing our full self to work. Well, we can't really do that if we were trained to fake it, right? Or if we think that we really need to be perfect, and there's so many negative outcomes. And so what we really need to acknowledge is that what these are negative thoughts. That's all, which means that we can change them. Okay. So I really want to I want to start out of these three things. I will tell you that the imposter syndrome is by far the most pervasive. And it is something that there's studies that show that 8 in 10 people have struggled with the imposter syndrome across the board. And this is about professionals. And it's even higher among what we call quote unquote high achievers. And so it is likely that some of you, many of you, maybe all of you, because you chose to be in this presentation, are really struggling with this. Or maybe you're connecting with this idea because you're sensing that it's there. And so what I want to talk about right off the bat is that this is a sense of inadequacy, that despite being competent, objectively, on paper, your resume shows that, your LinkedIn shows that you're competent in external objective ways. But what happens is we feel inadequate. And what this results in is this feeling that I'm a fraud, that I'm a phony. And it's part of almost of my identity that I doubt my abilities. And honestly, you can feel really confident and show up as confident, but these are deep-seated beliefs that have become part of our identity. And so I just want to say that this is not imposter syndrome is not self-doubt, right? Self-doubt is about what I believe that I can do. It's something normal, right? Self-doubt is normal. Whenever you try something new, if you have self-doubt, that's not imposter syndrome. So it's really important to kind of detangle those two, right? But what is the imposter syndrome really has to do with this idea of kind of this innocent idea. Hey, fake it till you make it. Hey, pretend you can ride that bike and then you will. The thing is that we buy into idea that we have to pretend. And so what ends up happening is there's this mismatch between what we actually logically we know that we're capable of, rationally speaking. We can make a case for it. And that's part of the practice that I ask people to do is, hey, make a case. If this was someone else, if you look at your credentials, please make a case and make a strong one. And people are able to do that if it's about someone else. But if it's about us, we just have this sense of anxiety, right? And it really shows up. I want you to know that this will show up very likely whenever you change jobs. Some changes are happening at work. When I will tell you, it happened for me when I set up my own business, when I started charging higher prices, back when I was trying to negotiate a little bit of a higher salary, and really these days when I write my newsletters, it comes up. Okay, so it's something that we manage. And this is why I talk about these tendencies as things that we tame over time. They become less intense, and they will show up less frequently. But I will tell you, this is something I'm still working through, right? This idea that I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough to be in this room. And so here's how people talk about this. This is so common. So a client said recently, and these are actual quotes because as a researcher, I like to take notes. I find myself constantly worrying that I don't measure up, that my boss will realize that she made a mistake when she gave me this role. It is so common. And it really sounds about the same, regardless of what level this leader is, whether this is someone who's an analyst being promoted to a manager or someone who is a director being promoted to a VP. I have both of those clients. And so what I want to say is that the inner imposter really does get triggered whenever we are doing something that feels challenging. And we all want to challenge ourselves and grow, right? But what the issue here is that no matter what our capabilities are, we constantly seem to need reminders and evidence. And so what happens is I tell people, hey, be careful, because if we lean so much in other people affirming us and reminding us that we are excellent at what we do, a lot of our power is gone. I tell people, when you are recognized, that needs to be the cherry on top. That is not the cake. The cake is you being able to manage yourself. Okay. And so here's how to recognize it. I want you to walk away with having a real clear understanding so you can recognize these automatic pervasive thoughts. And I'll teach you in a few minutes, how to interrupt these automatic patterns. That is how we're going to be able to change them. So here's how it sounds like. You might think that you don't deserve or a raise or a promotion, despite your experience and success. You might feel like you're faking it and worry that others will see your incompetence. This ends up making you feel out of place. You don't speak up in meetings and fully contribute to projects, even when you have good ideas. You don't put yourself forward for opportunities. I will tell you that these were the exact things I felt. And despite being recognized. And so what I'm curious, and I want to stop here because I want this to be engaging as much as possible. I want you to drop a note in chat, which I want to pause right now. And I want to look at those notes, and please type a yes if you ever felt any or some of these things. Yes. See, any language, you say yes. Yeah. 100%, right? These are things that we so many of us are struggling with. And research shows that women are more likely than men to feel insecure and second guess their performance. And the imposter syndrome is also really high in marginalized or minority groups. We know that. We feel that. And when I was researching the imposter syndrome over the past 2+ years, the more I read about it, the more I sank in my chair, because I honestly recognized all those traits that I have subconsciously ignored over the many years, not intentionally, because these are automatic. When I launched my business, the thought going on through my head was, hey, there's so many other people already doing this. Who am I to think that I can succeed at this, right? And so this is a who am I problem, right? And again, it's this gap between who you see yourself and how others see you, right? And so what happens is no wonder that we are not putting ourselves forward. And I'm looking at your notes, and it is part of how we grew up, right? It is cultural, right? And this is so important, right? This is the elephant in the room whenever we talk about the imposter syndrome. Look, the problem isn't just our perception. Let's be clear, right? This is the environment that created it in the first place. We're not born with the imposter syndrome. We are taught, right? And this is a part of the culture. It's part of the bias against underrepresented individuals. It is though, how we change cultures. There is a lot, and you will find, highly recommend a Brené Brown podcast, Dare to Lead. There's a specific podcast about this. There's an amazing article around that is called Stop Telling Women They Have the Imposter Syndrome, which has to do with changing the cultures from the top, right? But I will tell you as a coach that it also starts with how we see ourselves, because we really need to treat ourselves in a way that is empowering. No one can give us that. We also need to work on changing the culture and pushing back against these biases, right? And speak up. And the way that we will have the courage to speak up is by empowering ourselves. So it's a yes, and it's yes, it starts with us, and yes, it also starts at the very top, because the leaders of teams, by the way, some of your leaders of teams, I want you to really think about how might you contribute, because we're all also contributing on reinforcing some of this culture, right? We subconsciously buy into it, and that is the truth, and we have to become aware of it. And so, if you're a leader of a team, if you're a leader of a community, of an organization, this is something to really pay attention to, and really pay attention to how might you contribute to treating yourself this way and treating others this way. Okay. Second item that I want to talk about is perfectionism. Perfectionism is actually another form in which the imposter syndrome shows up, and is this tendency to set the bar high, to focus on imperfections. That is where our attention goes when we are in perfectionist mode, instead of really taking pride in accomplishments. Here's another thing that I'm noticing, and there's a lot of research around this, is this all or nothing, black or white thinking, which is really striving for the unattainable. Okay, so when you really give in to this type of thinking, you're essentially saying, look, there are only two possibilities here. I either succeed or I fail. Can you imagine what that does to our survival, to our fear. We have a flight or fight for that very reason, right? If we feel that the pressure is so high, we're basically going to avoid, right? We're going to avoid showing the work. We're going to avoid really participating, raising our hand, speaking up. And so this negative thought, another way that this shows up is really about this. If you have this tendency of kind of saying, this is good, this is bad. So kind of this binary thinking is another indication. And what happens is I see in coaching sessions, people have anxiety and impatience when a project is not perfectly done to their high standards. Okay. So for example, you make a mistake and you cannot let go of it. You keep ruminating it, right? And you say to yourself, oh my gosh, I can't do anything right. If I couldn't get that one little project right, I can't be trusted with bigger things. There's no way that I can ask for a raise now, right? And so we are essentially disempowering ourselves, right? And so what happens is we're ruminating, we're disappointed. Here's another thing, because we're putting such pressure on ourselves to be perfect, we procrastinate. So many times when people talk about, hey, I don't know why I keep procrastinating and I do things in the last minute. Well, the question is, are you trying to make this thing perfect, right? How pervasive is that fear of failure, right? And so I feel this every time I write. If you guys are interested to read my newsletters, take a look. Every time I write those monthly newsletters, and it's been 3 years now, or I've been writing a book that my family, my friends, are like clients, are even saying, hey, why don't you share some of that? I've been working on that book for 8 years, and it's not about me wanting to be grandiose in my newsletter or my book, but it's a fear that it absolutely is freezing me on my tracks, and it's something that I have to work through and manage, right? Honestly, the other thing that you might catch yourself is a tendency to be super defensive when you receive constructive criticism. We talk about giving feedback. We talk about identifying our blind spots. It's very difficult when I want to be perfect to receive that feedback. So here's how a client is describing this. She says, I feel the need to be perfect all the time, and I'm not even sure where this obsession comes from. We can tell. This is something we can be aware of, right? And again, be careful of not thinking of this as an admirable quality, because seeking perfectionism, it's really essentially keeping our eye on a prize that it's impossible, right? And so it is out of reach, and no wonder we feel unhappy with ourselves. And so here's how to identify perfectionism. You might worry so much about doing something perfectly that you procrastinate. If a project isn't done, you overwork and you don't share it. You blame yourself for every situation. I should have known better. It's all my fault. You are judgmental with yourself and with others when mistakes occur. And no matter what you achieve or attain, it just never feels good enough, because we're looking for the perfect, which is totally not possible. And you have a hard time relaxing, and you feel guilty after crossing even every to-do item on your list. I coach many moms, and this is something that we struggle with. And so I want to stop here, and I want to ask you to drop a yes or a C or any language they use at home, if this is something you resonate with, if you feel that you need to act perfect. And, I just want to say that having high standards is obviously not a bad thing. It's helped you grow in your career. But if you are missing out on timing, if you're stressing yourself to the point where you are feeling so stressed out and so you feel so much anxiety, potentially there's a low self-esteem there, because if I'm constantly saying to myself, I'm not good enough, this work isn't good enough, and if you're really being pushed by fear and you have unrealistic standards, this is where you want to pay attention and tame this. There's this kind of curve of diminishing returns, right? There's a certain point up until where this is helpful, right? I mean, we wouldn't have these tendencies if they didn't help us at some point. But the point is for us to see, where are we not enjoying the work, right? Are we focused so much on the outcome that we're not even enjoying? We're not talking about not doing things better. We're talking about honestly enjoying our work on the day to day, right? Because if I think that things have to be perfect, I see and I hear a lot of people talk about, hey, if I can't be outstanding, why even bother? Why collaborate with other people, right? We become critical of other people, right? And here's the thing that I want to say to those of you leading teams or managing other people. I see, and there's a lot of research backing this up. Perfectionist leaders are pushing people way beyond what they can do. And this is how we create a culture of burnout. Okay. We work overtime to make up for others' imperfections. This is where people are forgetting to delegate. And this is how other people are not learning those skills. And get this, I hear from people talking to me about getting feedback that they intimidate people, that their style of communication is interpreted as criticism. And they're surprised when they get feedback that others get hurt. It feels shameful, is what people say. They're like, I can't believe it. I'm just doing my job. And this needs to get done. And so what I want us to remember is that we're humans, right? We need to embrace the fact that we're flawed, that other people around us are flawed. We're all on different journeys and at different points in our career where we, just because now, we have to remember, if you're a leader, that 5-10 years ago, you didn't know some of these things. So we really have to embrace that people are at different places in their learning curve. So we have to really remember to treat ourselves and other people with kindness and self-compassion. People pleasing. Oh my goodness. This is, for me, probably when I first learned about people pleasing, and I call myself, by the way, a recovering people pleaser, this felt so embarrassing for me to realize when I read about this. And again, I didn't even know this concept, because this was part of the culture that I grew up in. And maybe for many of you, this is part of your culture, especially those of you raised maybe by immigrant parents, or maybe you grew up in kind of so-called old world cultures, right? To be a human being, like, we learned this is a survival tool, right? Like, we want to belong, we have to belong as part of a community, a tribe, or else if we are kicked out, we're not going to survive. So essentially, this is in our blood. It's in our DNA. And so, but here's the thing. Let's understand this. It's one thing about being nice and polite, and it's another thing to be a people pleaser. Let's understand what this is. A people pleaser tendency is essentially, when we're in this mode, we're focused on gaining acceptance and approval. So pay attention to that. That is our goal. Being accepted and approved of. How do we do that? And by the way, when I read this, and the more I understood this, there was some kind of dark things behind this people pleasing, because there is an aspect of manipulation here, which you, of course, are not wanting to do. But deep down, right, like, we want something, because by helping and pleasing and flattering people, we are essentially looking for something. What happens as a result? We are losing sight of our own needs, because we become so good at looking at what other people need and pleasing them that we forget about our own needs. And by the way, this is also an aspect sometimes of parenting. And so what happens is we lose sight and we become resentful as a result. Of course we do, right? So because we can't express our own needs when we are so focused on what other people want, right? So we want to belong, we want to be liked, yes, right? I mean, I remember I often struggled by really going along with other people's friends' requests all the time at work. I just at some point I realized that I wanted to say no. And I just, honestly, for a long time, I wasn't even aware that I was doing this. And, I mean, I was taught to be a mind reader as a kid, having to guess what my parents want, my friends, what my teachers want to hear. And I would say that. And, back really early emotional intelligence books really in some way really talk about this. And it is important. Don't get me wrong. This is the essence of working with other people. We want to be empathetic. We want to understand and read the room. But if we are doing it in a way, if we've been raised this way, and we are doing it because we're expecting something, right? I mean, if you think about it, you were praised for being a good kid. And that is how we are as parents also. Training this and continuing to do it, right? Because we're training people our kids and people to really pick up on our expectations. And what also happens is we pretend that we are okay with some things that we're not. And so here's how a client talks about this. She says, I'm always afraid I'm disappointing people. And I am not being a team player. I'm the one who knows how to fix things. So I end up not having time for important work. This really expands in has there are issues about not being productive, not being able to prioritize work, also has to do with the people pleasing tendency. So it has ramifications in significant ways. Because I mean, when I heard this client say this, it resonated with me so much because I know so much this pain of trying to help and fix everything. And so, people say to me, yesterday, someone said, who's a manager said, I keep wanting to really give people solutions and I'm having a hard time listening to them. Yes, that's another aspect of where the people pleaser mode can take us, right? We feel obligated to say yes. We begin to kind of fix everything. And so, what happens is we end up not being able to set boundaries at work and in our personal life. So let's look at exactly how do you recognize this? So you struggle to say no and set boundaries. You aren't clear or specific about what you're actually willing to take on and what you can't. You pretend to agree when you actually disagree to avoid conflict. And, I heard people say, if I say what I really think, it'll cause an argument. And we're avoiding that because we don't want to speak up. If you feel responsible for how others feel, you may apologize excessively, fearing that you will be blamed or shamed. You struggle to advocate for yourself, which leads to a harmful pattern of self-sacrifice and self-neglect. And you depend on validation from other people. I want to pause here, and I really want you to share a me too if this resonates with you. If you feel that, trying to be liked by others somehow leads to neglecting your own needs. And remember that this is fueled by the fear of rejection, right? Of criticism. And so, we think that if we're people pleasers, we can have better relationships, right? And so we make a lot of assumptions about what we think other people need. So many of you, ever since I can remember, yes, it's just how we were, programmed. And so what we're looking here is to begin to see how is this, the inner workings with how this kind of mindset and belief and automatic negative thoughts are affecting our emotions and our behaviors. So,
And Ramona,
yeah.
just wanted to share, we had a couple of comments. Somebody shared that they're seeing a lot of parallels between these attributes and being the oldest child of an alcoholic. And somebody also shared that they've learned that oftentimes people pleasing is a trauma response. And I think there's a lot of resonance with those comments. Mm-hmm.
There's so much research around people pleasing. It impacts so much, even when you think about what is it that I want. I remember my friend and I were talking about, hey, what my daughter asked us, hey, what are your favorite movies? And neither of us could even answer because we're so used to asking our other people, but hey, what do you like? Yeah, sure, I'll watch that. Someone said to me, I feel like I betray myself. And it really has that sense of I'm letting myself down. But here's the thing, you guys, the research shows that there is a pathway to healing from these self-harming tendencies that were programmed and we were conditioned. And so we can heal. And this is what I want you to remember. And so when it comes to feeling happier at work, this is an inside game, right? Because it's about beginning to look at taking our power back. How do we do that? It really starts with a sense of empathy and compassion for ourselves. Because the more we understand why we act in a certain way, instead of letting ourselves criticize ourselves and being really hard on ourselves, it really starts with shifting these negative thinking patterns, regulate our emotions with self-compassion, which I'll teach you in a few minutes, and beginning to change how we behave, how we communicate, how we delegate, how we empower other people, how we prioritize work, and how do we manage our work-life balance. I wanted to share this quote with you because so many people are telling me in coaching sessions, yes, this sounds good. I can remember to do all these things afterwards, which, by the way, after is when we, after a presentation, after a meeting, after a conversation, is when we end up beating ourselves up. And people are like, this all sounds great. I know it rationally, Ramona, but in the moment, I can't change it because this is my automatic reaction. And I say, of course, this requires stopping ourselves. And I'll teach you how to do that. The thing is to build a muscle, like I have to do a lot of repetitions. And so for me to build new neural pathways, it requires that I stop myself. But I need to remember that I'm a choice. And I really use this quote in a lot of my trainings because I want to tell people you have the power. And Viktor Frankl, if you haven't heard about him, this is someone, he's a Holocaust survivor who became well known as a social psychologist. And he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. It's a painful book to read, but truly enlightening. And in it, he talks about the freedom that we have and the power that we have and how we respond so that we can be more intentional, right? He says between the stimulus, and I'll hopefully we'll have enough time to really recognize the stimulus. What is it that causes me to think and behave and feel this way? He says between the stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our freedom and power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. It's super inspiring. So let's break this down for each of the 3 IPPs. So the thought for the imposter syndrome is I'm not good enough for a promotion. I'm not smart enough to be here. I've been faking it and I'm not as competent as others around me. The emotion that these kind of thoughts creates is I worry to be found out as a fraud and others will see my incompetence. You feel a large gap, as I said, between who you see yourself and as being and who you think you need to be. And the behavior that these thoughts and emotions is you end up not speaking up when you have good ideas. You disregard those positive comments about you. You overwork to compensate for this fear of being discovered as a fraud. For perfectionism, the thought often is, if you can't do it perfectly, don't do it at all, right? So the emotion that this kind of thinking is frustration, disappointment with yourself, with other people for not living up to ideal standards that you created in your head that you think are how you should be doing work and how you should be showing up. The emotion is also of that of anxiety because you're so afraid to make a mistake that people are going to jump down your throat. What is the behavior that comes as a result of these thoughts and emotions? Low flexibility in dealing with changes, which happen all the time. Criticism causes resentment and resignation in others. Not delegating, right? Which causes overwork and burnout. People pleasing. The thought is to be a good person. And by the way, these are lies. Let's expose them for what they are. To be a good person, I should put the needs of others ahead of my own. People will like me more if I always try to please them. If I don't rescue people, who will? There's the ego coming in. The emotion that is created by these thoughts is we're worried that expressing our own needs seems selfish and drive other people away. We're resentful for not receiving what we need. There's a sense of anxiety, neediness, self-doubt that people don't like you. What is the behavior that these thoughts and emotions create? Notice how this works. The thought is where this behavior originates. You can't say no. You want to help even when you don't want to do so. It leads to burnout. Others become so dependent on you rather than empowering themselves. And they feel obligated, they feel guilty and manipulated, right? And so this is kind of this chain that we're trying to break. And so it's also not enjoyable, right? Being caught in this people pleaser mode, right? And so what we want is increasingly to put ourselves out of our comfort zone. And so let's see, how do we actually change it? So we've learned in part one how to recognize it. We've just learned how our thoughts are impacting our behaviors. And now I want to teach you how to reframe those thoughts, right? And because that's where it all starts. And I want to also, I want us to pay attention to the fact that here we're also looking to regulate our nervous system. Because remember, the root of these behaviors and tendencies ultimately has to do with fear. The fear that I'm not good enough, the fear that I won't be liked, the fear that my work is not good enough. And so what I want to share with you here is a 3-step system that is based in a lot of science, and it's backed by science. And so let's dive right into it, because in a minute, I want us to break into groups to practice this together. And I also want us to come back and I want to answer your questions. So the step 1 of this 3-step process is to check in mindfully, to stop regularly, to center yourself. And so what I've been telling people is practice a minimum of 10 seconds. I modeled that for us at the beginning of the session. Stop for 10 seconds in between meetings. You're waiting in the car for the light to turn red. And what I've been telling people is, if you can set a 9 a.m., a noon, a 3, a 6, a 9 p.m., these are every 3 hours reminders, 10 seconds. And what we want is to ask ourselves, take a few deep breaths in those 10 seconds. You can take 3 to 5 breaths. Ask yourself, check in. What am I feeling? What am I telling myself? We want to interrupt these thoughts whenever we see them. And so the second step here is to acknowledge. How do we really break off of these automatic tendencies? Is we need to check in with ourselves. So first and foremost is that awareness. But now what we need to do is to actually name them. We want to be able to acknowledge. There's so much power here, because what this is saying is, this is a part of me. This is just a tendency. This is not all of who I am. There is a lot of power in acknowledging and naming these with self-compassion. And so many people honestly say, what is self-compassion? How do I do that? Because many of us were not raised with that kind of language, right? So here is how Kristin Neff, who has a book that I highly recommend to everyone who wants to really learn in-depth self-compassion, which I recommend to all my clients. If you're interested to learn more about self-compassion, you can look up Kristin Neff. Here is how she describes it. It's so beautiful. I have this book on my nightstand and I have it underlined, and I go back to it regularly. She says self-compassion is a way of emotionally recharging our batteries rather than becoming drained by helping other people, which we're not saying we're not doing. But we want to give ourselves the self-compassion, right? To allow us to fill up our internal reserves so that we have more to give to those who need us, right? And, sometimes I tell people, here's exactly what self-compassion sounds like, because honestly, I wasn't raised this way. I didn't really have this language. And so this is a simple formula. Everyone experiences these feelings sometimes. May be kind to myself as I learn and grow. I want to say this again for the people in the back. Everyone, and this is why we're sharing in this chat, I want to see that we need to remember that we're not alone. Everyone experiences these feelings sometimes. Not alone. There's nothing wrong with me. May be kind to myself as I learn and grow. That's what we'll do every day of our lives. We are learning and growing. And so what we're doing is, research is showing that we're activating this middle prefrontal cortex, where empathy circuitry is located, which we tend to disconnect from when we are in our push kind of fear-based mode. Okay. So we talked about interrupting. How do we interrupt these automatic thoughts? By checking in. 9 a.m., how am I feeling? Noon, how am I feeling? What's happening for me right now? Second, it is about naming them. Oh yeah, there it is. There's the people pleaser. My people pleaser wants me to say yes to this project. It's not me. It's my inner people pleaser, right? It's a tendency. That's okay. May I be kind to myself. So that's the second, right? So acknowledging with self-compassion. Everyone feels that sometimes. I'm not going to beat myself up. Oh, there you are, Ramona. You're such a people pleaser. That's not the voice. That's the inner critic. Is everyone feels that sometimes. And it's not your fault. Okay. Number 3. So these are the 3 steps that you will practice as a group in a few minutes. It is about reframing. And I will show you exactly how do we reframe our mindsets. I was talking to Lisa as we were preparing with this presentation, and I just kind of I had this slide in here, and she said, "How do you actually reframe it?" And this is the question that everyone asks. And I remember when I first learned about reframing in coaching school, how do you do it? So here's some things, and I'll show you specifically how you do it. What the idea between reframing is that we are now replacing these thoughts, right? So what we're doing is we're replacing negative thoughts, now that we've recognized them, with a self-empowering perspective, which is why we say it starts from the inside out. We need to self-empower ourselves with a new perspective, okay? We can do this. I promise you can. And what here is another thing to consider is when you can identify an opportunity to grow, contribute, and collaborate. So think about that. Whenever you think about reframing and you think about how do I empower myself, you might say, hey, I made a mistake here. This is an opportunity. This is a great opportunity for me to learn. How else do you learn if you do it perfect every time, right? If you kind of stay away from challenges. So the mistake, quote unquote, which there's no such thing, basically it's a learning opportunity. And people who are really, really skilled and really happy, and I've interviewed people who rated themselves as really happy, they're like, of course it's an opportunity. This is great. I'm so glad I had this opportunity. So here's exactly how we challenge ourselves. So I want you to challenge your negative perspective with a what if question. So you'll say, so here's some questions. Okay, you can say, well, what if others will benefit if I speak up in this meeting? If you tend to hold back. Believe it or not, that's a possibility. And I remember not speaking up in meetings and then someone else saying what I had been thinking and be like, yeah, that is possible. That is helping people. I wish I said it. Why didn't I say it? So what if other people will benefit if I speak up? Okay, so that's kind of giving us the courage to put ourselves a little bit more out there. What if his comment has nothing to do with me? What if this person even said something directly to me? How can I not take that personally? It's possible that person had a really bad day at home. Maybe his wife is leaving him. Maybe he found out from his doctor about his health. People's comments often, 90% of the time, have really nothing to do with us. It's about the perspective that person chose to take. What if this is normal part of the process? A mistake, absolutely part of the process. So I want you to also try to find the opportunity. And this is what this work about. I want to remind you, this is doing core workout. We want to get stronger core. We are doing workouts every day. This is a workout that we need to do every day. So the workout, this is not easy, or else we would be doing it. This is an intentional workout, which at first we might say, I don't know, I can't reframe this. Yes, you can. And this is exactly how you do it. You cannot reframe any situation to make it a beneficial situation. Of course, there are exceptions, but usually you can. What if this wasn't personal? Find the opportunity. What is good about this difficult situation? I practice this with my daughter has a panic disorder. And so I work with her with breathing. And so I challenged myself in the most difficult day recently to say, what is good about this? And I challenged myself to find three things, not just one. And you know what? One of them was, we are getting closer. Another one was, I'm learning more about mental health. The third one is, I'm going to be more empathetic. You can always find an opportunity. And I challenge you to find at least one. And really, do all three. Find three. Another opportunity, a way to think about opportunity is, so aside from what's the good, is what am I learning? That is the goal. I want to learn every day. And the third is, if this was an opportunity, I use this in coaching all the time. If this was an opportunity to learn or grow, what would it be? I want to pause here to give this question, because I want you to, if you're going to take like maybe one thing, I hope you take more than one. But take this question with you, please. Use this. Put this in the back of your pocket. If this was an opportunity to learn or grow, make that assumption, because we make negative assumptions all the time. Let's push ourselves to make a positive assumption. If this was an opportunity to learn and grow, tell me, what would it be? I use this with my kids when I remember. So that's how we reframe. Okay. Now, remember that the imposter syndrome, negative talk often sounds like, I am not smart enough to be here. Okay. My inner imposter would have stopped me completely from even applying to speak to you today. I'm not smart enough to be here. Okay. A reframe is, remember, the compassion. Everyone struggles with self-doubt sometimes. I earned the right to be here just like everyone else. That is a reframe for the imposter syndrome. Okay. And here's what happens. It changes how we speak, communicate, and behave. So if someone says, hey, your presentation was great, instead of saying, oh no, my presentation was not that great. I used to say that all the time. Minimize myself, minimize my achievements, minimize my own work. This is what we say. This was such a stretch for me. Thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. Simple. Okay. Here's how we reframe the perfectionist tendency. The thought is, if you can do it perfectly, don't do it at all. Don't bother, right? Because there's so much fear in doing things imperfectly. The reframe is, excellence doesn't mean perfection. I can be excellent. I don't have to be perfect. I value learning more than I value being right. Can you imagine that? If we all kind of really embody that, I don't need to be right. There's a lot of self-work in there. These are not easy. Our ego wants to be reassured and wants to be right. We don't need to be right. I can get started even if I don't have a full-blown plan. The behavior change that you might see is, you go from, I need more information before I can get started. We procrastinate. 2, I can make it work with what I have. I'll get started. Okay. Finally, for people pleasing, the thought is, by the way, these are again automatic negative self-talk, which runs underground. And so we need to be aware of it and stop it and check in with ourselves. So the negative thought for perfectionism is, wait, I just talked about this. No, I didn't. Is, if I can do it perfectly, don't do it at all. And so the behavior here is, is I need more information before I get started. Am I repeating myself? And what I, let's see, did I, people pleasing? Yes, sorry. Slowing down, deep breath. It's okay. People pleasing. So the thought is, people would like me more, as if I try to please them always. How do I reframe this? Setting boundaries is not selfish. It is an act of self-care that allows me to cultivate healthy relationships. The behavior change goes from not expressing my own needs and always saying yes to other people's needs, to let me look at my calendar and project priorities, and I will get back to you. This is a big one, okay? Because saying no doesn't make you a bad person, remember, right? You're not letting anyone down. People would rather know what's on your calendar and do things the way that you know you can, all right? So I want us to get into practice. There's a lot of research that says these talks are awesome. They're inspiring in the moment. We end up going back to our own tendencies. What I want us to begin doing here is to actually practice what we've been talking about. So what I want you to do in a minute, you will share with other people a situation where you felt the imposter syndrome or the perfectionism or people-pleasing tendency. Choose one. So the question will be, what were your negative thoughts or assumptions? Notice how I put assumption in there, because negative thoughts are assumptions. Then I want you to reframe it the way we were talking about. Ask what if questions and think about an opportunity, okay, to learn and grow. So reframe it with a positive perspective. Challenge. This is hard work. Challenge your negative assumptions. Okay. And the way you will do that is, again, ask what if questions or identify what is good about that situation and identify one or two opportunities to grow, innovate, and contribute. So we'll break into rooms in a second. And I encourage you to stay. I know a lot of people are have to go or are busy, and maybe some of you maybe don't feel comfortable being vulnerable. I want you to challenge yourself. This is how we embody and internalize these learnings. So to create trust, what I want you to do is to choose to be real and share with vulnerability and authenticity. And so here is what you will do. So Lisa will share, will break you guys into rooms of 3 or 4. And here's an example. So you might say, my inner imposter was triggered when my boss gave me feedback on what I need to improve on. My negative thoughts were, I am just not smart enough or a fit for this job. A way to reframe it might be, I've done a lot of good work this year, and my boss noticed it. She also thought there was an area that I can improve on. I will think of some specific things that I can do to grow in that area. This is a great opportunity to stretch and learn. I am lucky to have a boss who's helping me grow. Okay. And by the way, I hear people, it blows my mind, who say, I am not getting enough feedback. I am not getting enough information about how to grow. We can get there. So with that, the practice is, as you will be, hopefully we'll have some people who are staying. And if not, that's okay too. No pressure, no criticism. But if you can, this is where the work begins. And this is kind of a little free coaching session that you're getting. So I want you to, if you are choosing to stay and you're able to stay, and if not, thank you for staying so far. But if you can, please stay and share. And by the way, I have a few more slides before we wrap up, and I want to answer questions. My people pleaser was triggered when my negative thoughts were, and a way to reframe it is. I'm going to stop sharing. So I'll let Lisa break you into rooms.
And, okay. And did you want to do 10 minutes, Ramona, or do we want to maybe do groups of like 2, 3 and have like 6 minutes?
Yeah, maybe we just do 6 minutes so that we have, I want to be able to answer questions live. So maybe we'll just do, everyone gets a couple of minutes to share. All right, here we go. And maybe we can put the prompts. Yeah. So we're going to be in groups of 2 or 3 because some people are popping out. So you might be in groups of 2 or 3. If you're in a group by yourself, I will put you into a new room. Here we go. This is fun.
Okay, Azita, Lilia, if you need help moving into a room, let me know. See that you're assigned to rooms, but maybe you stepped away. And Ramona, I will bring everyone back at 12:43, which would give them 6 minutes and us basically 2 minutes to wrap up.
Right.
Okay.
Hopefully I'll be able to answer one question.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to stay a little later, if people want to, that's fine.
Perfect.
We can
Perfect.
offer, to stay and answer questions.
Okay, awesome.
$12:42, I'll do the 1 minute warning and everybody will be back by 12:43.
Okay, great. And how many people do we have who stayed?
It was kept going down once we moved people into breakouts, but it was at about 40. But then people are saying, I have to hop, thanks.
Totally.
So let's see right
Yeah.
Right now, 26 participants.
Okay. Brave ones.
Yeah. There were a couple of comments. Someone was mentioning, during imposter syndrome that it's also fueled by patriarchy. So that was in there. And then somebody shared, highly recommended a commencement speech at Smith College. So I will share that. I'll share that in the follow-up resources. Somebody had recommended that in the chat put that this person posits that if imposter syndrome is not really a syndrome at all, but it is a symptom of patriarchy, capitalism.
Absolutely.
So we might want to acknowledge some of those comments.
Absolutely. And at the end, I want to share my website if people want to sign up to the newsletters and read more about, I write about these tendencies and on my LinkedIn if people are interested to keep in touch and read further.
Sure. And you can certainly, and we have mentioned that the link is in the deck and I'll be sharing the deck with them. If there's any other information you have about your newsletter, we could put it in the follow-up email as well. Okay, let me bring everyone back. I'm closing the rooms. And so everyone will be back in a minute.
And I just sent you the link to my website and LinkedIn in case people are interested. To read further. All right, everyone. Welcome back. And thank you for staying on and thank you for sharing with others. And I'm curious if there is a particular insight or a question that you want to bring up. I would love to acknowledge and and answer. If there's a burning question, I would absolutely love to answer it. I can stay 10 more minutes after this if anyone is really interested in asking more. Is there any burning question or insight that you would like to share? I encourage you to do so.
And why don't we do this? I'm going to go ahead and we're going to end the recording and close this officially. Then we can ask questions after. We'll stay later for anyone that wants to ask questions or make comments. So thank you, Ramona. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And